I walked through the private terminal, heels clicking softly on the polished floor, my heart steady, my mind focused. I was dressed in a tailored cream blazer, dark slacks, and a silk blouse. Nothing flashy, just clean, sharp, and professional. I had flown private before, but this moment felt different. It was my jet this time. Mine. I was almost at the gate when a man in a navy uniform stepped right in front of me. No smile, no greeting, just a cold, suspicious glare. "Ma'am," he said sharply, holding up his hand like a stop sign. "This area's restricted. This jet is for VIP travelers only." I blinked, caught off guard. "Yes," I said slowly. "I know." Before I could finish, another staff member walked up behind him. She gave me a once-over, her lips twitching into a slight smirk. "Miss, maybe try the commercial terminal? The economy gates are that way." They laughed, not loud, but just enough to sting. I opened my mouth to explain, but something told me not to waste my breath. I could see it in their eyes. They'd already decided who I was. They saw a black woman standing alone, and assumed I didn't belong. Not here, not near their fancy jet. I looked at the plane, then back at them. My stomach tightened, but I didn't let it show. I just smiled, polite and calm, even as my chest burned. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't going to let them walk over me ever again. I wasn't born into wealth. Far from it. I grew up in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and floors that creaked louder than the traffic outside. My mom worked double shifts at the diner down the street. She raised me on her own, after my father walked out when I was 3. We didn't have much, but she gave me everything she could, her strength, her stubbornness, and her faith in me, even when the world didn't see what she saw. I remember nights when the lights were off because we couldn't pay the bill, and we'd light candles and pretend it was all just a game. Or mornings when she'd hand me toast with a smile, acting like it was enough, even though I knew she hadn't eaten herself. From an early age, I was taught that if I wanted something, I'd have to fight for it, and work harder than everyone else just to be seen. I loved computers. I didn't have one growing up, but I'd spend hours at the public library, teaching myself how they worked, watching videos, reading manuals. I was that quiet girl in the corner, tinkering with code and scribbling ideas into a torn-up notebook. By the time I was 23, I had a dream so big it scared me. I wanted to build something of my own, a tech company that solved real problems, not just made money. People laughed. Some said it was cute. Others told me, tech isn't really your space. I knew what they meant, but I didn't stop. I bought used parts off eBay, set up a workstation in my basement, and started building software from scratch. It wasn't glamorous. Some days I worked 15 hours straight, surviving on instant noodles and hope. I applied for loans, pitched to investors, and got rejected more times than I can count. But I learned from every no. I got tougher, sharper. The breakthrough came when I built a system for streamlining digital security for small medical clinics. A friend of a friend in healthcare gave it a try, and it worked. Really worked. Word spread. I started getting emails from clinics around the country. Then, 2 years later, a miracle, or at least it felt like one. A government agency found out about my software and asked for a meeting. I was terrified, walking into that gray office building with my laptop and a prayer. But I pitched my heart out. A month later, I had my first major contract. From there, everything changed. I hired staff, expanded, moved into a real office. I reinvested every cent back into the company. Slowly, we grew into one of the top cybersecurity firms for public institutions. I never took my success for granted, because I knew what it felt like to have nothing. Eventually, I became CEO of a company worth millions, but I never made a big deal out of it. I didn't post my life online, or wear flashy things. I kept it quiet. Humble. People still looked at me, and made assumptions, and sometimes, I let them. It made moments like today that much sweeter. So when those airport staff looked me up and down like I was lost, I wasn't surprised. I was used to being underestimated. But what they didn't know was, I'd already beaten odds far worse than them. I stood there, silent but steady, while the staff radioed someone on their little walkie-talkies like I was a threat. A few minutes later, a tall man in a gray suit came striding over. His badge read Operations Manager. He didn't greet me, didn't ask if I needed help, just glanced at me with the same kind of dismissive look I'd seen 100 times before. "What's the issue here?" he asked the staff. "She's trying to board the jet. Says it's hers," one of them said with a snort. The manager looked at me, then at the plane, then back at me, and just like that, he made a decision, not based on facts, but on how I looked. He raised an eyebrow, and said the cleaning crew should be using the service gate near the back hangar, not the VIP access lane. I stared at him for a second, unsure if I'd heard him right. "I'm not part of the cleaning crew," I said calmly. "Well then who are you with?" he asked, folding his arms. "Passengers for this flight haven't arrived yet." "I'm not with anyone," I said, "that aircraft is mine." He blinked, and for a moment I thought he might reconsider. But instead, he chuckled under his breath like I'd told a joke. "Ma'am, you need to step aside, you're clearly confused. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could say another word, 2 members of the jet crew, both in uniform, came down the ramp toward me. One of them, a woman with a clipboard, didn't ask anything. She just stepped in front of me and said, "This area is private property. You're not allowed here. Please leave." She reached for my elbow. That was the moment I felt my chest tighten, not from fear, but from a deep growing burn of anger. I pulled my arm back gently, but firmly. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, keeping my voice cool. "You're making a mistake," the woman scoffed. "Ma'am, you are not authorized to be here. I suggest you leave before security escorts you out." And with that, they all turned their backs on me, like I was some nuisance, not even worth their time. Like I was invisible. For a moment I just stood there. My heart was pounding, but I wouldn't let them see it. My jaw was clenched, my fists curled at my sides. I had done nothing wrong. I wasn't loud, I wasn't rude, I had walked into that terminal with grace and calm. And yet this was how they treated me. I looked at their backs as they walked away. They still had no idea who I was. I stepped away from the gate, my heels clicking softly as I moved toward a quiet corner of the terminal. My phone was already in my hand. My fingers didn't shake. I knew exactly what I was doing. I dialed one number. It rang once. "Protocol 9, I said calmly. "I'm ready." That was all I had to say. I ended the call and slipped the phone back into my blazer pocket. Then I waited. Not even 5 minutes passed before I saw her, Tanya. My executive assistant. 5'3", fast as fire, and sharper than any lawyer I've ever met. She walked like she owned the place, and today, she almost did. She strode straight through the terminal doors, not even flinching when security tried to block her. She held up a badge, a thick black binder in her hand. "Executive clearance," she said firmly. "Step aside." She didn't break stride. By the time Tanya reached me, the staff had started to notice. The operations manager turned just in time to see her hand him a sealed envelope and a folder. She didn't say much, just leaned in and whispered something in his ear. His face changed instantly. The color drained right out of it. His eyes flicked over the folder, then up at me, then back down again. He took a step back. You're. His voice cracked. He didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need him to. By now, the rest of the staff had caught on. Their faces twisted from smugness to confusion. The woman with the clipboard looked over and whispered to the co-pilot. I saw the fear start to spread, like a slow leak in a tire. The kind of fear that comes when you realize you've misjudged someone. Badly. Then I heard it. From behind me, one of the flight crew murmured under their breath. "Wait, she owns the jet." I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Because everything was already in motion. Tanya stood beside me, calm and composed, as the manager flipped through the documents she had handed him. His hands trembled slightly, as he read the company name, then the signature at the bottom of the ownership papers. My name. Not just on the jet. On the airline. I took a slow deep breath and stepped forward. The staff began to move out of my way without a word. The same people who had looked me up and down with smug little smiles now couldn't meet my eyes. Some looked at the ground. Others watched me like they were waiting for the floor to drop out from under them. I stopped just before the jet's steps. My voice was calm, steady, and crystal clear. You've all made a very serious mistake. The silence that followed felt heavier than steel. Not one of them moved. The operations manager finally found his voice. Ma'am, I'm so sorry, we were just following protocol. We had no idea. Exactly. I interrupted. You had no idea. And you didn't care to ask. The woman with the clipboard took a step forward, her tone suddenly sweet. We deeply regret the confusion. It's been a long day, and don't. I said quietly. But firmly. She froze. I walked in here with respect. I gave you every chance to treat me with the same. But you saw my skin, my silence, and decided I didn't belong. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't check the manifest. You just assumed. They all stood still, unsure of what to say. Tanya stepped forward again, and handed each staff member an envelope, termination notices. Effective immediately, she said plainly. You are no longer employed with this company. Security will escort you out of the facility. A chorus of stammered apologies erupted. Please, one of them begged. It was a misunderstanding. Everyone makes mistakes. I said, turning to face them one last time. But some mistakes are a reflection of who you truly are. And what I saw today tells me everything I need to know. I turned, climbed the steps to the jet, and walked inside. Finally, without being questioned, blocked or belittled. The cabin was cool, calm, and peaceful. My sanctuary. My space. Through the window, I saw security arriving to escort the former staff away. Some still pleaded. Some walked silently. Faces red with shame. But it didn't matter anymore. This wasn't just about a plane. It was about every door someone like me had ever been told not to walk through. And today, I kicked that door wide open. I didn't look back as I settled into my seat. Tanya remained outside, overseeing everything. Every decision I made was clear, direct, and final. The entire ground crew was terminated, on the spot. The manager, the clipboard woman, the gate attendants. Every single one of them. No more warnings, no more patience. They tried to protest, of course. The manager rushed to the foot of the jet stairs as security approached, his face pale, hands raised like a man trying to talk his way out of a speeding ticket. Please, he begged. You don't understand the pressure we're under. We were just following standard procedures. No, I said from the top step, you followed prejudice, not procedure. Another staff member, the same woman who had called me a maid, pleaded desperately. I have a family. I didn't mean any harm. We were just trying to keep the area secure. I stared at her, my face unreadable. You should have thought about your tone when you laughed at me. I replied, you made your choice. Now I've made mine. Security led them out, one by one. Tanya already had a backup crew flown in. My elite flight team, polished, professional, and most importantly, people who treated every guest and executive with the respect they deserved. The new captain greeted me with a nod. We're ready for takeoff, ma'am. I nodded and fastened my seatbelt. As the wheels lifted off the tarmac, I looked out the window, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The airport faded below us, but I knew the story wouldn't end there. A week later, I got word one of the fired employees had filed a lawsuit. Claimed I had discriminated against her, said I had fired her unfairly, and caused her emotional distress. I didn't even blink. Tanya handled it in less than an hour. The airport was covered in security cameras, including one right above the private jet gate. The footage clearly showed every smug smirk, every dismissive hand wave, every insult they threw at me without a second thought. We submitted the full video, complete with audio. The case was dropped before it even reached court. No apologies, no second chances. Just the truth laid bare, and that was enough. Because in the end, justice didn't come from yelling or threats. It came from standing tall, knowing my worth, and refusing to shrink for anyone, no matter where I was standing. Especially at my own gate. As the jet soared through the clouds, I leaned back in my seat, finally letting myself breathe. The sun streamed in through the window, golden and warm, casting soft light across the cabin. But my mind wasn't on the view. It was on the past, and the future. I thought about my mother, working double shifts, and still finding the energy to help me with homework. I thought about those long nights in my basement, typing away on a second-hand keyboard, praying someone would give me a chance. I thought about the little girl I used to be, quiet, unsure, invisible to most people, but burning with dreams too big to be ignored. And then I thought about today. How many other women like me had been treated that way? How many had been told to use the back door, to step aside, to wait for permission that never came? Too many. That's when I realized, this wasn't just about me, it never was. My success, my fight, my voice. They had to mean something more than just a win for myself. So I made a decision, right there in the sky. I would start a scholarship. One designed specifically for young Black women, who dreamed of working in aviation or tech. Girls with big ideas, and even bigger hearts, but who needed just one person to believe in them. And I would be that person. Not just to open doors, but to keep them open. To create a world where no one had to prove their worth just to be seen. Because what happened to me today, that was the kind of story people remembered. But what I wanted more than anything, was to help rewrite the stories of others. Stories filled with pride, with power, and with the knowledge that they belonged, wherever they dared to go. Never let someone else define your worth. That's something I want every woman, especially every woman of color, to hear loud and clear. Your power doesn't come from their approval. It doesn't come from fitting into a box someone else made. It comes from inside you, the fire that no one can take away. I know what it feels like to be overlooked, to be underestimated, to stand in a room full of people who don't see you for who you are. But I also know what it feels like to rise above that. To hold your head high, even when the world tries to push you down. You are stronger than their judgments, smarter than their doubts, and more capable than they'll ever admit. So stand tall, speak up, claim your space, because you belong, and your dreams are valid. If this story inspired you, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps me share more stories that matter. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, share this video with them. Because your voice matters. Together we can lift each other up, and change the world, one story at a time.